Hello everyone, welcome, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and I hope you are already set up with your OM-1 cameras, getting ready for learning what's all about the focusing with your OM-1 camera. Actually, I just realized I totally forgot to put the intro video at the very beginning, so I'm sorry for that. No intro today, but basically, hello to everyone. I'm really happy to have you all here. I see many greetings from, all around the world, New York, from Durham, UK, Pasadena, California, Greece, even Greece, Denver, Maryland, South Florida. I wish I was everywhere there with you guys, but no, I'm sitting here in my small office, but I'm totally ready to show you all the single points which you can actually find in your OM-1 camera, every single item which actually treats focusing in some way. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn on my camera now. I will go into the menu. I will set up, or I will show you the AF part of the menu, and we'll just go through it one by one, little by little, so that you, within this, let's say 1 hour, I hope I will be able to manage within 1 hour. If not, sorry for that, maybe it will take a few more minutes. But within this 1 hour, you should be able to learn just about everything. So if you are still hesitating to read the manual, obviously you can find everything in the manual. But you know how it is, sometimes it's more easy to listen to someone and actually see him doing it in the menu, setting it up, than reading the manual, finding all the answers to your questions. So basically, let me just turn my OM-1 camera on. And what I will do, I will squeeze myself into this very tiny little place, basically, which I will be in one of the corners every single time. And what you will see today is just, you'll be seeing what I'm doing in the OM-1 in the setup. The very first thing which I'm going to do is, because I've just returned from a photographic workshops and I've done many settings on the camera. So the very first thing I'm going to do, I'm just very quickly going to reset it to the default settings, which, as you all know, you do here. The very first part in the number 6 portion here is reset initialize settings. I'll just press OK button. If I want to reset everything, then I go to initialize all settings. Again, pressing OK. Yes, OK. This is it. So I have just resetted the camera to the default settings, basically as if I was just taking it out from the new box. But today we will stick in this AF segment. As you can see, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sheets, basically, with all different kind of settings. And let's go one by one through all of them. So within 1 hour, you should be able to learn today every single setup as for the focusing on this camera. We are going to talk more about, obviously, mostly about photographic points of view, not that much about video, but let's stick to the photo today. Okay, so basically the very first point which you can see here is the AF mode. If you press OK, then what you can see is all different kinds of focusing modes. Basically, this is something that you can do much faster in the control panel. So by pressing OK, you get this control panel, and if you go here, then this is exactly where you are, and you'll be able to choose from single focusing to continuous focusing, through manual focus, obviously, then continuous focusing plus tracking, and then obviously pre-MF and Starry Sky AF. We'll go into them a little bit more into detail, but this is exactly the place where you'll be able to find them. So in the menu, it's here, is the very first part. In the control panel, you will find them right here. So very quickly, what is single AF? Single AF actually means that by pressing either shutter release button or AF on button, what it does, it actually focuses. So I just prepared one of my tiny plants. I'm very poor actually in watering them, so they are kind of dying. Sorry for that. But this is just one of the plants I found around the house. So by pressing either the shutter release button, which I did just now, or by pressing the AF on button, which is on the back, and you can use your thumb to press it, you will do the focusing, right? And every single time you do it in single AF, it will just focus by half pressing it. Then if you go to continuous focusing system, then what it does, you hold half press the camera, I mean the trigger, and what it does, it just refocuses I mean, on the image, or I mean on the subject as it moves around. Obviously, the flower is not moving, so you will not be able to see it. Manual focus, quite clear. You then just use the front ring on the lens. So this is the manual focusing ring, which I'm turning around right now. Very easy. And then obviously you've got continuous focusing with tracking. This is something quite amazing, because basically what it does is, if you turn it on, it locks on the spot. And let me just loosen the dial on my tripod. And as you can see, even though I'm moving around, then it stays in actually one place. So by focusing at one single point in this kind of in this flower, I can even move it around and it still stays in the same place. It is on the tripod, so the movement is not very smooth. But basically, if you were, for example, focusing, let's say, athletes running around, or some other sports guys running around, then you would be able to use this CAF plus tracking, because then you would just point the AF targeting point, which is this green area, on their faces, for example, and then it would just keep tracking their faces, focusing on them as they are running around the athlete's ring. Okay, so then if we go to the pre-MF, what is pre-MF? Via this functionality, you can actually measure the distance from the lens, or actually from the sensor, to the subject. So basically, if I switch to the pre-MF, click OK, then it tells me settings info. The info is highlighted. It means that I need to press the info button. And then what it tells me press the shutter release button. So I'm going to press it. And as you can see in the right bottom corner, it measured that it is roughly 20 centimeters from the subject to the sensor, or from the sensor to the subject. And now basically, if I press OK, then it is stored in the pre-MF memory. So every single time that I wake this pre-MF, it will be 0.2 meters, so 20 centimeters basically. So pre-MF is very nice. For example, if you are shooting, let's say, animals out in the wild, and you know that they are, let's say, moving from maybe 50 meters to 100 meters away from you, and you don't want the camera to be refocusing on subjects which are very far away, not even to the subjects which are very close to you. So what you can do is you can measure via this pre-MF, you can measure the distance where the animal is actually moving. It might be, I don't know, 100 meters. And then in the AF limiter, you will set up the distance from maybe 50 meters to 200 meters, because you know that this is the area where the animal is moving, and it will never refocus somewhere close or somewhere very far away. So even the focusing is much faster then. So this is pre-MF. And then there is the Starry Sky AF, which I will show you within a second in the menu itself, because you can actually set it up to two different versions. So this is the AF mode, right? The standard one which you would use is single. If you are shooting moving subjects, then it will be CAF or CAF tracking, and then manual focus is quite obvious. Okay, what's the second part? Second part is autofocusing together with manual focus. What does this mean? If I turn it on and I go back to the control panel, then you can see that with all the automatic focusing systems, whether it's single AF or CAF tracking, there will always be the MF behind it. What does it mean? Let me show you. I just pressed the shutter release button, or half pressed it. It focused. I'm keeping the shutter button half pressed still, but I can still use my second hand to actually move the focusing ring, manual focusing ring around, and refocus slightly. So for example, if I'm shooting in a zoological garden, I'm shooting in line behind the bars, the AF system would most probably focus to the bars, not to the line, because it's closer subject and it's much more contrasted. So basically, I might use this kind of combination of the AF plus MF function in this case. So easy as that. Let me just turn it off again. Now, let's come to the Starry Sky AF settings. Why and when would you use this? Well, obviously, from the name, it's quite clear. Once you are shooting Starry Sky, whether it's Milky Way or whatever else, basically, in Starry Sky AF settings, you've got two different, let's say, variations of this mode. One is speed, one is accuracy. Speed, most of the time, you would use once using, for example, 8mm 1.8, very bright wide angle fisheye, which we have. And you, let's say, try to take the picture of starry sky or the Milky Way handheld. You know that with this kind of stabilization, which you have in OM-1, you are capable of holding a couple of seconds exposure. So basically, with 8mm fisheye open to 1.8 aperture, you would be somehow able to shoot the Milky Way even handheld. But obviously, I personally recommend shooting starry skies from the tripod. In that case, you don't necessarily need the camera to focus as fast as possible. You can give it a time. So I would recommend the accuracy mode. In that case, you just put the camera on the tripod, you switch to the accuracy mode. Obviously, the focusing itself will take a couple of seconds, but you don't care because it's on tripod, right? And then it will just take the image, but you have you are 100% sure that the starry skies, I mean the stars on the sky, will be perfectly focused. As you know, before we introduced the starry sky AF mode in EM1 Mark III, it was kind of difficult. I mean, it is always difficult without these modes to actually focus on the stars, because it is infinity on one hand. On the other hand, if you look at the lens itself and you switch to manual mode and you go all the way down, I mean, towards the infinity, but you can still go like few millimeters even behind, but this is not the infinity. You definitely need to go to the infinity symbol, and then you should be somehow focusing stars. So what I recommend is definitely focus peaking for shooting stars, but basically you don't necessarily need it if you have a camera, which is OM-1 obviously, which has this kind of accuracy starry sky AF mode. So, okay, so this is basically the starry sky AF settings. What you can also choose here, you have the options of basically how to trigger the focusing. You can either trigger it by standard release button or by AF on button. And then obviously you can also use the AF on button by simply pressing the button, or pressing the button twice, once to start it and once to stop it. Because otherwise, if you are using AF on button or shutter release button, you need to press it and keep it pressed basically, or half pressed. So this is the starry sky AF settings. If you are not shooting stars, I mean, forget about it. If you are shooting stars, I mean, you'll be very happy to actually use this this mode, which is extremely precise. Then let's go to half pressing modes. As you know, once you are using OM-1 for a while already, you have probably realized that there is the half pressed mode and then full pressed mode of the shutter release button. You can set them up actually. I mean, if you say no, for example, to single AF, then it actually means that it's not going to focus. Let me just show you. Let's see, or make sure that we have SAF. Yeah, we do. So now if I half press the shutter release button, as you can see, nothing is happening. If I turn it on again, let me say yes here, then obviously it is going to show you two symbols, or actually three of them. One is a small little green square, which is the exact place where the camera is focusing. Second one is the beep, which you can hear if you don't turn it off. So it is the beep sound. And the third one, in the left bottom corner, every single time that you focus, you will see this green dot. If the dot is not flashing, if it stays still, then it means that the camera was able to focus, and you can then fully press the trigger, which I just did now. So basically it means that the picture is going to be perfectly focused. I mean, the place where the AF point was pointed at will be perfectly focused. If for whatever reason, let me just try to find some place where it's not going to be able to focus. Well, it is still somehow focusing quite well, even here. I'm trying to find a place where there will be very, very little contrast. Let me see. Now, for example, now the camera was not able to focus, and in the left bottom corner, you can see that the green dot is flashing. This actually tells you that the camera didn't focus, and it does not even let you fully press the trigger, or it does, but it does not take the picture, right? You can obviously set the camera in a way that there will be release priority over focusing priority, then it would mean that the camera would be able to take even this blurred picture. But obviously, I don't have this set up yet, and I don't necessarily need to have blurred pictures stored in my card. So this is the half pressing modes which you can set up. AF on in manual focus mode. What does this mean? Basically, if you are in MF mode, let's go to the control panel again, and let's switch to MF here. So I just turned on the manual focusing. And if I turn on the manual focusing, that it means that by pressing either the AF on button on the back with your thumb or the front release button, none of them actually works. I'm pressing both of them. It just takes the pictures, but it does not focus. The camera is not focusing, right? But you can tell the camera to have at least one of these buttons, which would be the AF on button, to be fully functioning. So what I would do is I will switch this to yes. And in this case, now I am half press, or I'm actually pressing the AF on button with my thumb. And as you can see, the camera focuses every single time I press it. And I can keep it pressed, or I just don't need to, but because the camera has focused already. And now I will just use my front finger on the shutter release button to simply take the picture without refocusing again. So even in manual focus, you can still have one of the buttons, which will be the AF on button, to be fully working. So let me switch this back to no, and let me also go to the single AF. Okay, now release priority. This is what I was talking about a few seconds ago. Release priority actually means that you can let's say, tell the camera to take the picture even though it was not able to focus properly, right? So as I said, or as I showed you a few minutes ago, a few seconds ago, that in some cases when there's very little contrast or no contrast, then the camera is not able to actually focus properly, but you still want to take the picture. Okay, then what you would do is you will switch the release priority to the, let's say, you will turn it off basically. So I'm sorry, so you will turn it on, the release priority. With continuous focusing, it's in the default setting, it's set to on. Why is it? Well, because most of the time, when you are shooting moving subjects, this is when you would use CAF or CAF cross-tracking because it's continuous. So it's, let's say, following the subjects around. Then most of the time, you are also using it in the combination with sequential shooting, which actually means that if you are shooting sequential shooting, one image after another, and you want the camera to refocus from one image to another, then obviously you will never get like 100% of images perfectly sharp. But obviously, let's say, depending on the subject, depending on the scheme, or depending on how fast they move, you will get from maybe 60 to 80% of the images which will be focused. So that's why the CAF is still on, even during the release priority here. I mean, even with the release priority, because you want the camera to keep working and not stop after, let's say, it is not able to focus. Yeah, so you want the camera to keep shooting, keep focusing, because you are following some moving subjects around. So in CAF, it is turned on. In the default settings, in single AF, it is turned off. Okay, so this is basically the first chapter. The second chapter here tells us something about AF illuminator. What is AF illuminator? Well, this is something that you will get in touch with once you are shooting in very dark conditions. So obviously in default setting, it's turned on. If you think that it bothers people around you, this red light illuminator, then you will turn it off or switch it off. But basically, you in a standard shooting, when you are shooting in dark conditions, you want to keep it on. Let me just, for example, cover my lens just to show you what the red light is. You can probably see it right now. Yeah, so this is the red light illuminator. What does it do? Well, it simply illuminates the area that you are focusing at, and basically gives some contrast to the details that you want to focus at, right? Nothing else. Obviously, with the AF illuminator, if you are shooting in the silent mode, what is silent mode? We all know this is one of the, let's say, shooting modes. For example, single, you can use with the mechanical shutter, which is this rectangle. If you see the heart symbol next to it, then you are switching off the mechanical shutter and you're only using electronic shutter of the camera, which actually means that in this mode, no matter whether it's single shooting or sequential shooting with the symbol of the heart, no matter of which one of them you use, what does it mean? The camera will switch off the beep, so the beep sound. It will also switch, obviously, the mechanical shutter, as I said, so it makes no sounds at all. The camera is totally silent. And of course, it also turns off the AF illumination so that it doesn't bother the subject or the surroundings. So it's kind of very discreet equipment in the moment of shooting. But what if you want to use the silent shutter, which means the electronic shutter with the heart symbol, but in the same time you are in very dark conditions and you want the AF illuminator to be turned on? Well, basically what you do is you go to number 1 settings, so the very basic settings, and you go to this page, page number 7, and all the way down is silent settings. And in these silent settings, you can turn on the beep sound, for example, but you can also turn on the AF illuminator. So you would just allow it, and this is it. Nothing else needs to be done. So basically, if you allow the AF illuminator in silent settings, then you will be able to shoot silently, but together with the AF illumination, which helps a lot. Okay, so let's go back to the AF modes. So where are we? AF illuminator. Now, second part is the AF area pointer. What does this mean, or what does it talk about? Basically, what it says is that once we are focusing right now, it shows you the frame. What is the targeting frame? This is exactly it. Obviously, you can change the shapes of it by, once it's green, by simply turning the front or back dial. It doesn't really matter which one you choose, but once it's green, you can use one of the dials and choose or change the shape of the focusing area or the focusing point, simply like this. It's very easy. And all these, which you can see, the single point, the small point, the cross point, then obviously the middle, which is like 3x3, and then the large, which is 5x5, and then the whole area. These are all the default, let's say, shapes of the focusing system, which you can choose from. Now, let's get back to the AF area pointer. You can choose from, let's say, 2 or basically 3 options. You can turn it off. If you turn it off, what happens? If we turn this thing off, then basically we will not be able to see the illumination. Let me just turn it off and press OK again, because I didn't turn it off. Now I'm half pressing the shutter release button. And as you can see, within the square, which shows me where I am focusing at, I don't see any green squares, green small squares. So it doesn't show me where exactly it's focusing. It will be within this black rectangle. So the only symbol which I see here as I'm shooting in the silent mode is, again, the green dot in the left button area, which proves that the camera has actually focused. If I want to have, let's say, some kind of visible confirmation that it was focusing at the area which I want to, I would use on 1, because in that case you can see that there is this small green square within the bigger or black one, and it shows you exactly where it's focusing as I'm half pressing the shutter release button. And then there is the second part, the second mode, and it's this one, but it only works in continuous focusing. So I will turn it on first, then I will turn on the focusing. I will switch the focusing from single to CAF. It can be CAF or CAF tracking, right? One of them. And now I'm going to half press the trigger, and I'm going to move the camera slightly around. And as you can see, well, maybe it will be much better visible if I enlarge the focusing area to maybe this big. Okay, now move it slightly down. And now, as you can see, all these green squares are showing me where the camera is continuously focusing at online. So it changes all the time. As you can see, as I'm moving the camera around, it just focuses at these green rectangles because it's continuously focusing. Obviously, the camera or the subject is moving around. So obviously, even the area of the focusing is changing. So this is the second mode. Obviously, this is very useful when you are using CAF or CAF tracking. In single mode, you would simply use the OM-1 version. Now, what else do we have here? Face and eye detection. Well, again, this is basically something that you can, let's say, turn on much faster, much easier via the super control panel. And that will be here. So here you can obviously turn it off. You can use the intelligent face detection, which actually means that it not only detects faces, but it also detects eyes. I will show you within a second on a picture which I have just prepared. Then you can also choose or tell the camera to choose from left eye or right eye with this one, these two. And then obviously there is the standard face detection, which does not detect eyes, but it detects just faces. So let me just take the camera from the tripod for a second and point again at this picture, which I've got ready here for you. And as you can see, it automatically, once I have the faces turned on, you can see the symbol on the left side, on the right side of the menu. So it detects two faces, two squares. One is white and one is gray. The white one actually means that this is the one that it's going to focus at. If I half press the trigger, it lights green for a while, as you can see. And if I press the trigger, then it takes the picture. But let me just show you what happens if I switch to intelligent face detection. Then all of a sudden, you see even the eye. And if I half press the shutter release button, then the eye is getting green. So it's going to focus perfectly at the eye itself. Again, taking the picture right now. Now, once we are at it, maybe it will be good time to actually show you how you can switch between the two faces. What you need to do is you need to set up one of the function buttons to be able to switch from one face to another. How you do it? Very easy. Again, control panel, you go to this wheel, you press OK, and that actually takes you directly to the button function settings. So let's say that the very first button, which is exposure compensation, which I don't use, I mean, via the button, I use exposure compensation, but via dials, not via this button. So let me just say that this one, I will dedicate to the face detection. So this is exactly it. So this version, sorry, not this one, watch out, it needs to be the face in the square. So if you choose the face selection, press OK, then you can see that it is actually assigned to the exposure compensation button. And now, if I, let's say, point my camera to these two faces, and now I press the exposure compensation button, and in the same time, I'm switching the rear dial with my thumb, you can actually see how it switches from one face to another. Yeah. So it's as easy as that by simply pressing the button which you have assigned to face changes and then turning the dial from one side to another. So basically, this is very easy, and I definitely recommend this kind of setting if you are shooting people a lot. Because if it's just one person, then it's very easy. Then you will just turn on the face detection and that's it. But if you are shooting more people, then the camera does not simply know which one you want to focus at. And obviously they are in different kind of distances from you. So you need to be the one to choose where you want or which face you want to detect. Obviously you can obviously do it the old way. The old way would be switch the face detection off. And then, for example, in single AF, no matter what the shooting mode is, you would simply choose a smaller point and you will just move this point around from one face to another and so on and so on. So it's as easy as that. But obviously, let's say the artificial intelligence, which is capable of finding faces, different kind of subjects, we will talk about it later, obviously helps you a lot to detect the face and focus precisely on the eye, which is exactly what you want to. You don't want to have the nose perfectly sharp, but eyes blurred because of the shoulder depth of field, for example, with some telelenses or some portrait lenses with bright apertures. But you want the eyes to be perfectly pinpoint sharp. So, okay, let's go back to the menu. 7:30, I'm talking 30 minutes already. I'm not even in the house. So I'm sorry if it's going to be longer than I expected. But okay, face and eye AF button. So basically, this is again about, let's say, setting up how the shutter release button and the AF on, which is on the back of the camera, should behave. In this case, they are both, let's say, set it to face priority. But you can also say that it's going to be used for, let's say, focusing point priority. How does it work? Well, let me show you again, for example, on the faces, because if we have, I need to turn the face detection on. So I turn it on to intelligent face detection. Then let's see where the focusing point is. Okay, here. Let's say that, for example, we will want to focus not on the faces, but on the camera. Then I have just set up my shutter release button, not the AF on button, but the shutter release button, to actually ignore faces and to focus every single time to wherever the focusing area is. So I'm setting it up here on the lens of the camera. So now if I half press the shutter release button, you can see that it's focusing on the camera lens, not on the faces. You see this green square there. If I'm using AF on button, then it is focusing on the eye. You see that the eye is getting green every single time I press it. And basically how I did it, by simply assigning this face and AF button to, let's say, focusing priority to the shutter release button and the face priority to the AF on button. Obviously, you can do it the other way around. I mean, however you want to. Subject detection, well, my favorite, obviously, because in this case, the AI actually is helping us a lot to find the subjects. You don't need to care about actually focusing at them. The only thing which you do is you concentrate on the composition, on how the image is going to look like. You know, you just square the image, how you like it. And then whether the bird is flying from the left side, from the right side, from top, wherever, you don't care, because the camera is capable of actually finding the bird, in this would be in this case, for example, or finding the train, finding the cars, motorcycles, finding the plane on the sky, or finding the cats or any other mammals, basically. So it just does it for you automatically. Again, this is the way how you would set it up in the menu. But once you are there, out there in the wild, and you are shooting, and you want to switch quickly from the birds, for example, to the mammals, then it actually takes, let's say, too much time to actually go into the menu, finding the subject detection, turning it on, you know, switching from one to another. So there is an easier way. And again, the easier way is function buttons. So what you would do is you will simply go again to where you set the function buttons. Let's say, again, I will use the first button, which is the exposure compensation button next to the shutter release button. And I will simply go to here, because this is the symbol for subject detection. Once I do it, and I now press the exposure compensation button, because this is the one I assigned, and in the same time, I'm turning the back or front dial. As you can see, I'm simply switching from one subject detection system to another very quickly, as easy as that. So function buttons are, let's say, one of the most amazing features on the cameras, and I really love it on OM-1 because you can assign almost anything to any buttons on the camera. But let me just switch it off for now. Okay, good. Subject detection, eye detection frame. Well, this is something that's not only about eye detection, but also about detection, for example, as you can read the cockpit, or the eye of a bird, eye of an animal, not just eye of a human being. So basically, as we have seen with the face detection, not only the whole face was squared with the kind of rectangle, but also the eye was was pointed at with a small rectangle. So this is exactly the place where the camera is going to focus. And you can obviously turn it off, you can turn it on. So this is options where you would be able to switch this thing on. Okay, now we are talking about sensitivity with the first area, which is called CAF sensitivity. As it's called CAF, obviously it's working only in continuous focusing system. And what it does is it changes how the camera, or how quickly the camera actually reacts to subjects which are appearing in front of the camera. If you make the camera to be very sensitive, which you would go to +2, in that case, the camera will be refocusing from one subject to another extremely quickly, very, very fast. When would you use it, or when would you not want to use it? For example, imagine you are shooting heart of buffaloes, for example, or no, better go with sports, for example. You are shooting a soccer game, right, or football game, and you are pointing the camera with your telelens to far away a player, and obviously, because there are other players running around, then sometimes it will happen that some other players will actually run in front of your lens between you and the player you are actually concentrating at and focusing at. Then if you go with the sensitivity to -1 or -2, which means you would be lowering the sensitivity, then it's okay, because obviously the player will not just stay in front of your lens, he will just pass by. And that means with low sensitivity, the camera would not even realize it. So it will still stay focused to the first player which we concentrated at. On the other hand, if you would want the camera to refocus very quickly to some other subjects which are in different distance than the one you were originally focusing at, then what you would do is then you would use, for example, +2. So +2 is for, let's say, very erratic movement. So for example, it will be squirrel running around from one place to another, jumping from left to right, and etc. So you want the camera to be very, very sensitive to actually be able to focus at it every single time. On the other hand, if it's a very fluent movement, like a bird flying, for example, pelicans flying from one side to another, then you can stick with 0 or even go to -. Okay, AF center priority. This is something that you would choose not with single point or small points, but every single time you can choose this only with, let's say, larger focusing areas, which is the cross point, midpoint, large point. I will show you what it is just to make sure we are all on the same page. So these are the larger points, right? The cross one, middle one, or large one. Or obviously it can be any other one which you create, because you know that with OM-1 you can create your own shapes of focusing areas. But this CAF center priority in continuous shooting actually means that the focusing will start every single time in the middle of this area. It will start in the middle. If it's not able to focus in the middle because of whatever reason, because there is like no contrast or it's very dark, then it will start searching other points within this focusing area. So this is the CAF center priority, and you can switch it off, obviously. If you uncheck it, then it will not start there. It will simply start wherever it finds the focusing faster. Here with C1, C2, C3, and so on, you can obviously use the ones, the shapes of focusing areas which you created. As I don't have any ones created yet, they are blank. So CAF center priority, clear. AF limiter. This is something I was talking about at the beginning, and it's one of the most amazing features, I have to say, on every single camera. Basically, this is something that you will find on, let's say, telelenses. You can find, for example, on macro lenses as well. We've got the new 90mm macro lens, and I hope that many of you already have it. If not, either borrow it from someone, try it, and I'm 100% sure that if you are a macro fan, you will not be able to sleep without it. So 90mm macro lens is one of those who have this, let's say, AF limiter, physical AF limiter on it. But you can also basically do the distance limiter for any other lens via this menu. And how you do it is you simply set it up for, let's say, for example, from 5 meters to let's say 50 meters will be my first shooting. I mean, first distances, because this will be, for example, animals which are very close to me. So from 5 to 50. other distance, then I would set from 50 to maybe, I don't know, 200, let's say. So let's make it 200 very quickly. And then the third distance will be for animals that I'm scared of, so I don't get any near to them. So it might be from maybe 200 meters to whatever, to, I don't know, 400 meters, for example. Okay, so let's make this switch very quickly. And now, again, I will show you how to activate this very quickly. And again, you don't want to go to the menu, switch the AF limiter on, obviously. So you would choose one of these three and so on and so on. What you want to do is you just want to press one button and choose one of these three. So how you do it, again, function buttons. Again, let's choose the first one to make it easy. And you will choose, where is the limiter? Let me find it quickly. Okay, here, AF limit. This is it. AF limit is the function. And now if I just press the function button, which I just assigned it to, then you can see in the upper right corner, there's this green AF limit sign. You can see clearly that it's turned on, but you don't know which out of these three it is, right? So what you do is you keep it pressed, this function button. So I keep it pressed, and I'm turning one of these front or back dials to either turn it off or to make the first distance, which will be from 5 to 50 meters as I assigned it first, then from 50 to 200, and then from 200 to 400. Why would you want to do this? Well, very simple answer to that. Imagine that, for example, you are shooting eagles, flying eagles, for example, and you don't want the camera to focus on far distance mountains, or let's say some forest which is behind them, and you don't want the camera to accidentally focus on some bush or grass which is close to you, right? So this is the reason why you would say, okay, I will choose 50 to 200 meters, because I know that this is the distance where the eagles are actually flying, the distance from me, from my camera. So this is why I would be able to choose one of these three. And now, as you can see, I'm trying to focus with my camera, but obviously because my AF limit is set to on 2, which is very, very far away, it's not able to focus. So now I need to turn it off. And if I turn it off, it again, immediately it's capable of focusing on very close subjects, which is now like 20 centimeters away from me. So AF limiter, very useful function. Please use it if you are not using it so far. I mean, amazing stuff. AF scanner, well, this is something that basically, again, only works in CAF mode or CAF tracking, or obviously in the combination of CAF MF, CAF tracking plus MF, and so on, but basically in the continuous focusing modes. And what it does, it basically, once you are starting CAF, and the camera is not capable to find some contrast, so it's in very, let's say, very dark conditions, for example, or it's pointing at an area, or for example, of white wall where there is no contrast, so the camera is not able to focus. So what it will do is the focusing lens will start moving from the minimum distance to infinity, basically trying to find some kind of, let's say, focusing point. Obviously, it will not find it if there is like really no contrast. So you can turn this functionality either off, or you can keep it on. Basically, if you turn it off, it might be sometimes very helpful once you are shooting, for example, animals with telelenses on far distances, and you don't use the AF limiter, which I strongly recommend, which I just described, because if you leave it or if you keep it on, then it may happen that because the camera will not be able to find any contrast in some, as I say, dark conditions or very bad lit conditions, then it may happen that the focusing element will totally go out of focus, and it's not going to focus on the animal which is 100 meters from you, but it will go from, as I said, almost 0 to infinity. So the animal in the meantime might run away. So you would rather want to keep it off in this case, and simply release the shutter release button, and start the focusing again. So basically, there are some moments where you don't want the lens to get totally out of focus. You would rather want to stick it at some, let's say, distance, some area. So on-off for AF scanner. AF focus adjustments, well, this is something that I have personally never used. I was very lucky because I have never had any lens which will show any kind of let's say front focus or back focus. If you let's say happen to have some of these lenses which will not focus precisely at the distance which you are focusing at, but it will, let's say, focus slightly, it might be a few centimeters in front of this or behind this, this is the front focus or the back focus, then you might do, let's say, tiny increments adjustment of this kind of focusing. But basically, if you happen to have a lens which is really not focusing properly, then what I would recommend is simply send it to our service department. They will check it, they will go through it, and they will adjust it perfectly, and it should not happen. So front focus, back focus should basically not be happening with our lenses, because they, at least those that I came across with my, let's say, 25, 26 years experience at Olympus and now OM-SYSTEM, I was very happy not to have any of these experiences. Now, focusing for the movie, basically we said we are not going to discuss movie that much, but this is very quickly. This is very quick. For AF mode, in the video shooting modes, obviously you can choose any of these which you are capable of choosing during the photo mode. Only you don't see the starry sky here, obviously. So you have the single AF, continuous manual focus, single AF plus MF, continuous tracking, and pre-MF. So you can even measure the distance and store it in the memory. So it's the same thing for movies as well as for still shots. I will jump directly to the sensitivity, then I will go back to the speed. The CAF sensitivity is basically the same thing as we have just seen for CAF sensitivity in the photo mode. Only this time it's in the video mode, right? And CF speed, this is something that I strongly recommend you to adjust if you are shooting videos. I don't know if you are, but if you do shoot videos, then especially with the video, the type of CF speed which you use is extremely important, because video is not a still picture. It's a continuous, let's say, movement of people or animals or other things which you are shooting. And for example, if you want to refocus from one person to another, which are in two different distances, then you may do it very quickly, or you may just do it very slowly, which actually makes the movie to be very smooth and nice, you know. So it's sometimes nice to have very, let's say, slow refocusing from one subject to another. But sometimes when there is some very fast action, you know, there is some action, animals running one after another, or even people, you know, doing some sports, boxing, doing karate and stuff like that, then you want to the focus or refocusing to be happening very, very fast, extremely fast. So in that case, you would choose the +1 refocusing or +1 focusing. Okay, we are almost there, but let's see. The 5th chapter is about AF target settings and operations. The AF target mode settings is something I touched already. Basically, it is about the shapes of the focusing areas, about the focusing points. As we said, again, I'm going back to the live view. As we said, we've got all these shapes. So it's the all area, it is the large point 5x5, it is the middle point 3x3, it's the cross point, and it's the small point, and even the single, which is the tiniest one, which we can have on OM-1. And there might be more. And there might be more actually means that you can create your own. You can see that there is C1, C2, C3, and C4. For example, imagine I mentioned flying pelicans today. Imagine that you want to shoot flying pelicans above water level. So what I would do is I would just check C1. Then I will press the right arrow button, which gets me here. And here again, with the front and rear dial, I can actually choose the shape of the focusing area. And as I am shooting pelicans, which will be flying from left to right or right to left, what I will do is I will choose this focusing point. I mean the shape of the focusing area. Then, of course, by pressing info, I can also choose the grid on which the focusing area is going to move. So basically what I want to do, it doesn't really matter in this horizontal position how many of them there are, because my focusing point is a line. So what I need to do, I just need to move this line up and down, nothing else. So as I said, it doesn't matter how many of them are here. I can just leave it as it is. But what it does matter is how many of them are in this kind of vertical position. And I don't want them to be that much, so I will just squeeze it to number 5, and that's it. I press OK button now. So it is stored because the C1 is checked. There's this checkbox. And now if I go back to choosing the, let's say, the focusing shapes, then I will go through all of these, and then all of a sudden C1 appears. So now the pelicans flying from one side to another can just go through this area. Obviously, I will have the subject detection turned on all the time. I mean, bird subject detection. And the only thing which I will do is I will just control the height or the position of this focusing area, whether I want to have them flying, let's say, here, and basically the bottom part will be just the water level, or whether I want to have, let's say, more mountains on the background or more sky in the background, let's say above the pelicans. So this is the only thing which I would do. And you can play with this, I mean, however you want to, depending on what you are shooting, what subjects you are shooting, you can create any kind of, let's say, focusing point. But let's go back to this AF target mode settings, because there is still one thing which I definitely recommend, especially for you macro shooters, or for those of you who want to, let's say, point the focusing area, the tiny one, on a very precise place within the image. So the C2, for example, for me, would be that my area would be just 1 by 1. So this very tiny square will be my area. And of course, I will keep the focusing grid on which the AF point is moving as it is. I don't want to, let's say, make it very thin. I want to use all focusing points. So I will go 1 by 1. What it does, and let me compare it with a standard small point, which is default in the camera. So this is checked, okay. And let me just show you how it's done. So I will go to C2. So now the C2 actually moves one square by another. So if I'm going up and down, you can see it does not miss any area. It just goes one next to each other. But if I switch to a standard single point, which is this one, it's exactly the same shape, same size, right, as the one I just assigned. But if I move this single around, then what happens? It jumps, it leaves 2. So basically it jumps to every third field. So for example, if I was about to put the focusing square directly on the top part, which is of this flower, in the middle part of this flower, as you can see, it's not even possible. See, it's just jumping around. So what I have to do is I need to go back to the C2 position, which I just created. And with this one, I can very simply go directly to the place where I want to. And now press the button, and there it is. The picture is focused. The picture is taken exactly in the place where I wanted to. So this is exactly one of the reasons why I would definitely use these customized AF target modes. And you've got 4 of them, obviously. So yeah, let's move ahead. Orientation linked. Yet another great feature of this camera, which unfortunately I cannot present you properly, because as I am connected via HDMI cable, it doesn't matter if I actually take the camera in my hand and turn it 90 degrees to the right side or 90 degrees to the left side. Obviously, HDMI cable does not recognize the orientation, and it will, on the monitor, it will show every single time the same thing. But let me just describe what this means. AF target mode you can check. You can also check AF target point. Basically, a target point is more a target position, right? So it's a position of the focusing point within the image, within the picture. While AF target mode means that you are choosing one of the focusing shapes, which we have just discussed. And depending on the orientation of the camera, so whether you are shooting horizontally or you are shooting 90 degrees turned to the left or 90 degrees to the right, then the position and the shape of the focusing point can change. So this is very easy. Please try it. As I said, I cannot show you exactly once I am using HDMI cable, but try this, and it's an amazing feature. Set home position is basically something which is somehow partially connected with the camera orientation, because as you can see, when I leave orientation linked checked, both boxes are checked, then obviously also in the set home, I can assign the shape of the focusing point and the position of the focusing point to all three positions of the camera. Horizontal, turned 90 degrees left, turned 90 degrees right. Yeah. So for example, again, I cannot show you, I will describe. In this position, I can say, okay, target point means target position of the focusing area. In the horizontal position of the camera, the focusing point will be, for example, in the left side. If I turn the camera 90 degrees right, the focusing point will move to the right side, for example, and so on and so on. And it will even change the focusing shape. And this is done here. So in the default setting, it's all areas, but you can switch it to, for example, single. If it's turned 90 degrees left, then you will switch it, for example, to the cross. And 90 degrees right, you can switch it to whatever small point, for example. So there will be three different focusing shapes depending on how you actually hold the camera in your hand, and three different positions as well. And it all depends whether you do or do not check these boxes here. Okay, select screen settings. Sorry, I'm back again. I just need to turn this off for now. Okay. There we go. Select screen settings. This actually shows you how the focusing area, or the way how the focusing area is being moved around the picture. You can either use the front and back dial, but you can also use the, let's say, the upper, lower, right, and left arrows on the arrow area, which is just next to the OK button, right? So if we keep it this way, then it means that once the green point area is activated, then I'm using front or rear dial to simply switch the focusing shapes. And to move the area around, I am using the arrow buttons, or obviously you can still use your finger and do it via touch screen on the display, which is very easy. But I'm now using the arrows. If I want to do it differently, then I can go back to here and switch it to, for example, the dials will be changing the position, and the arrow buttons will activate, basically, the types of shapes, focusing shapes. Yeah. So now I'm using my arrow buttons next to the OK button and changing the positions. And if I use the front and back dial, I'm just moving it from left side to right side and up and down. Depends on what you are used to and what is faster for you. So please try both of them and choose which is better for you. Okay, so go to loop settings. Oh, well, let me just switch this one back because I'm actually used to use it the other way around. So I rather use the front and back dial to actually choose the focusing shape, and I'm using the arrow buttons to move it around. Good. Now, loop settings. What does loop settings do? If I turn it to loop 1, then what happens? I will make it smaller so that it's visible. I'm going from one side to another with the focusing area, the focusing point. And how I'm doing it, I'm pressing and keeping the right arrow button pressed. This is what I do right now. I can go do it also going up and down, the same thing. And as you can see, it stays in the same line. Yeah, so it doesn't go up, it doesn't go down. This is the loop 1 settings. If you switch to loop 2 settings, then what happens is that the focusing area will actually go within the line, but it will go to the next line every single time. I'm just keeping the right arrow button pressed now, and as you can see, it goes from one line to another. Same thing up and down. Again, it's going to circle the lines one after another after it reaches a certain point. Obviously, if you just want to jump from one place to another, it's much better to use the joystick, which is on your thumb. And with the joystick, obviously, you can move everywhere around the area very quickly, and it doesn't need to be in horizontal or vertical lines. So this is the loop settings. And the view all option, I mostly don't turn on, but if you turn it on, then it actually means that once you are moving the area around and you reach the very end and you press again, then the full focusing area is turned on. Obviously, then if you go, let's say, again to press if you keep pressing the right arrow button, as it's my case right now, then it just goes again from one side to another. But every single time it reaches the end, it highlights the full focusing area. Okay, so this is the loop setting. AF targeting pad is something that I cannot show you, but because I'm again connected via HDMI cable and it's not active. But what it actually means is that once you have the AF targeting pad on, you are actually using the back screen for moving the focusing point around. How you do it? You look into the viewfinder. In the viewfinder, you basically see what you are shooting, and then you use whether the thumb or your front finger, it doesn't really matter. Mostly it's thumb because it's more comfortable. So you put your thumb on the screen and you move it around. And what you see in the viewfinder is actually the green focusing area moving around from one place to another as your thumb is moving on the screen. So basically the screen itself is turned off. It's black, it's totally black, but it works like a touchpad. Yeah. So as it's working as a touchpad, you can use it for moving the focusing point from one place to another by simply looking into the viewfinder, but using your thumb moving the focusing point around. So AF targeting pad, one of the brilliant features again, so which I would use once you, if you are in a condition where there is lots of movement, you want to switch your focusing point from one place to another very quickly. So either use the joystick or use this AF targeting pad, and for, let's say, reportage photography is an amazing feature. And last but not least, last page treats, we are 1 hour, 2 minutes late already, but I mean, it's not going to take more than, let's say, a few minutes, don't worry. MF assist, manual focus assist mode, brilliant, again, feature, and it has different options. One of the options is magnifying. Let me turn it on for you and show you what it does. If I turn the manual focus on, which I will do right now. Okay, so I've got manual focus on. And let me again take the picture of this beautiful tiny orchid. What happens if I touch the focusing ring? I just touched the focusing ring and it gave me this huge, large enlargement of which area? Well, obviously of the area which is the focusing area. So as you could see, it was around here. So it means that once I touch the focusing ring, it enlarges this tiny area. Sorry, it enlarges this tiny area, so I don't see anything because it's like black on this area. So what I do is I'm going to move the focusing area somewhere else, like on this place, for example. And now if I touch it and I am circling the manual focusing ring on the lens, and as you can see, it's refocusing from front to the back very easily. And in the left bottom corner, you can see the enlargements. It is 10 times, but it doesn't need to be. It can be smaller or even bigger. So what I do, once I'm in the enlargement, I can use my back dial to make it, even 14 times, or even go down. So from 7 times to 5 times to even 3 times. So the enlargement is not that big, and you have better overview of the picture. Obviously, if you want to concentrate on some detail, then you make the enlargement slightly bigger, and that's it. Which does not mean that this is going to be the final image. No, the final image is this one. Once you let the, let's say, focusing ring go, once you don't touch it, it just returns back to the original image. But once you touch it, it makes the enlargement and it helps you to focus properly, more precisely. So this is the magnifying. I will turn it off again. But what I will show you is the peaking. It's much better, and I will show it to you on maybe some magazine because it's perfectly seen there. So I just turned the magnifying, the focus peaking on. And what I'll do is I'll just take this old Olympus catalog and put it down on my desk. And let me just very briefly show you how it works. I'll take the camera off my tripod. And here we've got an old magazine. And I'm starting to focus. And as you can see, the red areas are the ones which are in the focus. Let me just go backwards a little bit. So all this is red. All what's red is in focus. As you can see, I'm just turning the front focusing ring from front to the back and again, and this is it. So basically, I can precisely see what is going to be perfectly focused and what's not, what's out of focus already. Yeah. So focus peaking is definitely one of those features which, again, you do want to use if you are shooting, for example, some macro stills, something that does not really move, or somewhere where you definitely want to be 100% sure that these are the subjects which are going to be perfectly focused. So this is the focus peaking. And obviously, you can also set the focus indicator on and off, which actually means that once I'm focusing, then on the button you see this line going from the macro to infinity, which is the symbol of the mountains. Yeah. So this is just a symbol to show you whether you are focusing to the infinity distance or to the close to the camera distance. So yeah, this is the third, let's say, indicator or help during the manual focusing system. Now, going to the peaking settings, we have just discussed the focus peaking settings, but you can actually set the color of it. So it doesn't need to be red. It can be white, black, and yellow, depending on the background. So obviously on the white snow, for example, you would not be using white, but something that's more contrast, like black or red. Then obviously you can also set the intensity of the color. So it can be normal, but it can also be high. So sometimes in dark conditions, the focus peaking does not need to be, let's say, or is not seen properly. So you would rather want to choose this high, let's say, intensity of the focusing of the color, which makes it even brighter. And sometimes even in very bad, like let's say, lighting conditions, you want to even adjust the brightness of the image as it appears on the screen or in the viewfinder. It doesn't have any, let's say, influence on the final image, on the exposure of the final image, but it helps you to see the focus peaking areas. So this is the focus peaking settings. Preset MF distance. Well, this is something we have done at the very beginning, because as you remember, when I was choosing, or I was showing you these, let's say, focusing modes, one of them was pre-MF. And we measured, let me just move the camera not to the orchid, but to the wood on the back. And let's see if we measure a different distance. So pre-MF, I press the info button on the camera as it tells me, and now I press the shutter release. And as you can see, it focused precisely, and it tells me it's 0.4 meters. So it's 40 centimeters away from the sensor in the camera, which is okay. And if I say, okay, it's roughly 40 centimeters, I don't need to measure it because the camera did it for me. I just press OK button. And what it means is that what I have just measured, you can see here in this pre-MF distance. You can do it the other way around. If you know the distance, then you go here and you just type that it's, I don't know, 10 meters and 50 centimeters, for example, or something like that. Yeah. So you can actually sign or write the distance directly into the camera, or you say that it's 10 meters. Okay, good. And it's there. So this is something that you can either measure with the camera, or if you know the distance, you can type it into the camera. Well, MF clutch, what is the MF clutch? This is directly influencing the functionality of the front focusing ring on every single lens or pro lens, which has this capability of being switched from autofocus mode to manual focus mode. And basically what it does is that it makes it either functional or dysfunctional. So if we go to MF clutch, it's either operative or inoperative. Why would you want to make it inoperative? Well, there are many ways or many reasons why would you want to do this. For example, well, let me just switch to single AF and focus, because I don't want you to see the blurred picture in the background. Okay, so one of the reasons why you would want to make the MF clutch inoperative is you are shooting, for example, some fast moving action, whether it's sports, whether it's animals, it doesn't really matter. You're shooting reportage photography, and you don't want accidentally to switch it to manual focusing. It actually happened to me once ages ago. I was shooting a wedding of my friend, and it was with the 12mm 2.0 lens, brilliant lens, very tiny one. I had it on, I think, OMD EM5 at that time. It was a very long time ago. And all of a sudden, I was shooting pictures, and they were not focused. And I didn't know why. What happened? I mean, what did I switch wrong? What did I do wrong? And then I looked on the lens after like 10, 15 images I already shot blurred. And I looked at the lens, and I noticed that this focusing clutch, manual focusing clutch, is switched to manual position. So obviously, once I noticed, I switched it back on. But now you don't want this to happen in some kind of really fast-moving event, So you want to make it inoperative. And in this case, it does not really matter in which position this focusing ring is. It's simply, the camera is simply focusing automatically all the time. Then focusing ring, you can also, let's say, set it up that it will focus, this manual focusing ring will focus from 0 to infinity, turning to the left side or turning to the right side, depending on what you are used to, maybe from some other brand which you had before. And reset lens, something that you may do, you may not do. If you turn it on, it actually means that after turning off the camera and turning on the camera again, it will always reset the lens to infinity. I mean, it will reset the focusing element of the lens to infinity. That's it. I mean, you don't necessarily need to turn it on and off. You will not even recognize it, because the camera is so fast. Once you grab the camera in your hand, turn it on, no matter whether this is on or off, you just half press the trigger and it will focus very quickly. So this functionality I have used very rarely, if no time. So basically, this covered the MF functionality, or MF, I mean focusing functionality of your great camera, which is OM-1, which you all have. And I hope we have just discussed just about everything. And please do not forget one thing, and that is very important. Many of these features which we have today discussed, you can assign to function buttons, which are here. I mean, all these buttons, and you see there are many of them on OM-1. Even the front two buttons, which are very rarely used. When I talk to photographers, even very few ambassadors are actually using these two front buttons. Don't forget about them. You can either use them, for example, for C1, C2 settings, for your customized settings, which you have in the camera, but you can also use them to assign some kind of functionality. For example, the switching of the subject detection modes. This is one example. It can be anything else. But don't forget that there is many of the features which you can assign to these buttons. If we just go very quickly through some of them, it can be, as I said, from C1 to C4 buttons. But we are talking about focusing today. So obviously, what you want to do is to be able to use, for example, this focus bracketing, once you are shooting macro, and I'm sure many of you are, why don't you just assign the focus bracketing functionality to just one button so that you don't have to go to the menu? The AF on button you do already have on the camera. It's on the thumb, right? But you may use it, or some of you might want to use it with different fingers. So you can assign AF on functionality to a different place. You can use one of the buttons to simply switch by clicking it on and off, by simply switching from autofocus to manual focus, right? You don't need to go to control panel or to the menu. You just do it this way. Pre-MF, again, you can measure it via setting up a special functionality button. This is the place where which we have already discussed today, and this is the place to choose the subject detection. So again, pressing one button, keeping it pressed, and switching the front or rear dials. Very easy as that. AF limiter, thing we have already shown. I have already shown you today. Great feature. AF area selection, again, can be assigned to one button. Home position of one of your focusing points. Again, just by pressing this button, the focusing points, wherever they are in the moment that you are using it, will return to the default position which you assigned it into memory. Focus peaking, again, can be assigned to one button. The focus peaking we just talked about a few seconds ago. And yeah, that's just all about focusing. All the other things are different. So the focusing of OM-1 is amazing. It has many variations. There's many, let's say, things to be set up. It can be used for stills. It can be used for moving subjects. It can, the artificial intelligence can help you in many ways to actually detect the subjects automatically. So it's just up to you now to take the camera, grab it in your hand, go through the menu, go through the AF menu as we have just discussed it today, and please try it. And I know there are probably many questions, but I'm not going to answer them now. Sorry for that, because I'm already like 17 minutes more than I originally wanted to. But I'm going to go through all of them, and I'm going to answer the questions in the chat below the video. So you'll find them there. You'll find all the answers. I hope it was somehow useful for you, and I hope you do have your brilliant OM-1 at home to be able to try. If you don't have your OM-1 yet, ask your friends, go to your near, let's say, photo store, try it there, and I'm pretty much sure that you will love it. Okay, guys, have a nice day, evening, morning, wherever you are from the world, and I hope you enjoyed it. And as we in Czech say, as photographers, from one photographer to another, we say, have a good light. Bye-bye, guys.